Here we are again on another podcast. I'm so excited to have you aboard again, Jake. As always, such a smile. So our disclosure really quick, what we are not. This podcast is built around our tips, advice, suggestions, and probably some opinions of ours. We have, both of us combined, a lot of experience, education, and training. But we are not doctors, we're not licensed nutritionists or dietitians. However, we are passionate about health and fitness. Thank you again, Jake, for your continuous support and fun during these podcasts. So let's begin. What are we talking about today?
Full range of motion, really important. Why don't you start? Because you got back issues and stuff. I bet it's even more relevant to you right now than.
Right. Well, when I think of full range of motion, I think of those individuals at the gym that are doing these pull-ups, where they're just kind of like doing these small little ranges of motion, not doing the full extension or even a push-up, just doing kind of these tiny little movements, or curls. I see people all the time not doing the full range of motion. In reality is that's not proper, in my opinion. Again, throwing out my opinions here. For sure, people are choosing too high of weights when it comes to curls, or even on the pull-ups. Use the assisted machine, throw on some weight to kind of counteract that balance so you can get the full range of motion, so you are developing your muscles properly. So that's, for me, how I look at it in an outlook overall. But for my back, I know, since you mentioned my back, yes, my back, always a challenge. I do know, for me, looking back, I wish I knew what I know now 20 years ago. And what I did, which was probably the detriment of my back, was I basically sat at a desk for 16 years for 9 to 12 hours a day with no exercise. In fact, I always thought, why are people exercising? That's a waste of an hour of your life every day. I was like the most negative person back then. But what I did was, I decided, I'm going to start working out. And I went at it like a bull in a china shop, kind of like how I do everything, and didn't focus on my core first and developing full range of motion or developing the proper movements. I went at it like, hey, I'm going to, go in this gym and I'm going to dominate and build all these muscles and get on stage and bodybuild and do all these things. But I didn't do the core basics and get the right movements in place first. So yeah, full range of motion is important, wouldn't you say?
From multiple perspectives, yes. From like a health and longevity perspective, super important. It's so important to make sure that your joints can move within their full range of motion. And if you don't, then your full range of motion will lessen. It'll be a lesser range of motion. And that's not what you want. You want your hips and your ankles, and especially your multi-plane joints, to really be able to move through their full range of motion. From a working out perspective, you're absolutely right. Like, the science is pretty clear. Like, if you have to choose between a partial rep and a full range of motion rep, full range of motion is going to be way more efficient every time. Now, there's a time and place for everything in life and in working out. And there's definitely a time and place for partial reps, like for a bodybuilder who's plateaued or who has to really define every little individual muscle. That's fine. But for the average person, like, you're going to just get way more benefit just getting the full range of motion. For something like biceps, it's not that big, For something like squats, there's a little bit more of an argument for exploring different depths, maybe because you can't do nearly as much weight if you go all the way down versus if you go down to like your legs are parallel, a little higher. There is an argument to be made that if you want to develop strength in addition to hypertrophy, that you should vary those, especially for those multi-plane joints, those big joints. But yeah, on average, full range of motion is by far the best way to go. And just to add to that, that includes like a nice pause at the top and bottom, no bouncing, because otherwise you're cheating the very sort of ends of those muscles of their work too. But I think the most important thing besides, just getting buff and what works best for hypertrophy is really to encourage people who might be listening to this to develop full range of motion of the joints that will affect the quality of life. And I'm talking mostly about the back and neck, you know. And if you imagine like a fresh sapling that's nice and supple that can be bent in all different kinds of positions versus an old stick that can't be bent, that's what your spine is turning into over time, you know. And you have to continually bend it to keep it loose and supple. And there's a lot of people that can't come close to like getting a nice C in their spine either way, backwards or forwards, and it'll just get worse. And those joints really need full range of motion more than like your bicep muscle joint, you know, in my opinion, for longevity and quality of life. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually currently going through a therapy process with my chiropractor to get better full range of motion with my spine, my upper cervical spine, actually. And it was amazing to me to learn all the things that I've done in my life have caused damage, you know, damage that you can't see unless you do an x-ray or an MRI. But she proved it to me that, you know, I've created a lot of damage to my neck, and I associate that back to, you know, sitting at a desk, staring at a computer. And I remember during that 16 years and actually 22 years sitting at a desk on, you know, on a computer all day long, I remember just throughout the day hunching over with the stress and all the, you know, stress, mainly the stress would ride on top of my shoulders, and I just feel my shoulders just curling over throughout the day. And I had nothing in my regimen that would help me improve my posture, to work on having good full range of motion and keeping my head on my shoulders, you know. And so that's something I'm working on right now, and something that a lot of people don't realize, that their heads are, you know, tilted forward because they're constantly on their phone or constantly staring at the computer, or just don't realize that their posture is way off. But it's associated with a couple of different things, but full range of motion is really important. I think that one thing that I've realized is the importance of strength in not only your chest, but in your upper back as well, just to keep you upright and keep you strong, have that good posture, and have better full range of motion when we're talking about a shoulder press or any kind of movement, really. So, yeah.
I believe that like on average, your body should spend an equal amount of time basically in every position. Because if you spend more time in one position, you'll force, you know, your spine or whatever it is to bend that way. It's like our spines curve forward more than they curve backwards because we spend more time. Almost every human does. If you just watch like the full range of the neck or the full range of the shoulders, how many times do you see people go through that full range of motion on a daily basis? You never do. They're stuck within this little fraction of this much range of motion. And so what happens? The ability to get that full range of motion just declines over time until this is all they have left. And it's like, we're encouraged by society to sit still in school. We're encouraged to sit still at our desks. You know, it's weird if you see someone like doing that stuff, but it's something we should do more. We should move more. We should get that full range of motion. And even if you just take 5 minutes while you're sitting at your desk and just consciously get every joint through its full range of motion, you know,
Right.
It could be really beneficial.
Set your timer for every 30 minutes, get up and do some stretches, get some movement, because you're right. The body's going to adapt to whatever it is that you do. You know, whether you're really sedentary, it's going to adapt, and muscles and joints and everything is going to loosen up or tighten up. Probably a little bit of both, which is going to decrease your range of motion. I believe in yoga. I don't do yoga enough. I, you know, wish I could fit that into my schedule once a week or twice a week. But I do love going to yoga, and it really is an eye opener. Like, oh man, you know, look at that girl. She has full range of motion.
We should do a podcast on yoga, because yoga is very interesting, because yoga is something you can do all the time. You don't have to go to a class. Like, it's a personal practice. It's basically your personal movement and posture practice, and how you get into alignment and how you explore your range of motion. And that, it's not any more complicated than that. Now, we've boiled it down to poses and you have to go, but practice yoga every day. Be aware of where your spine is in space.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple moves that I like to do, and I think of it more of a stretch, but in fact it is. I mean, downward dog is just a simple one that everybody knows, and that one's great. But
you like that one?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. Get them hamstrings stretched. Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, I do know a lot of people that I coach or help one-on-one that come to me with very little range of motion. And it's it's a, you know, it's something that definitely has to be focused on. It has to
For
be.
older clients, that's, I mean, honestly, best thing I can do for them a lot of times, just get them moving a little fluidly and freely.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it, if the body adapts, if you don't have full range of motion and you need to get this object up high, your body will adapt and find a way to get that object down from wherever it is you're trying to retrieve it. But the problem is you're probably using a whole bunch of muscles that you shouldn't be using, and what ends up happening is an injury will transpire. So yeah, it's really important to, you know, a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, you're going to probably tell me to lift weights, and no, that's not really what I teach actually. But full range of motion, flexibility is really, really important. And I noticed that some of my clients struggle with joint pain, and a lot of that is lack of knowing what full range of motion is. You know, just running into the gym and doing a bunch of those common workouts, you know, the sit-ups, the push-ups, the chest press or squats, and then they're not focusing on some of the elements that really keep them flexible and fluid and move and be able to be really strong and perform those exercises properly,
Yeah, you can
and prevent
train
injury.
you should and can train your range of motion. You know, maybe one week you can go this far and the next
Yeah.
week you go even farther, and you just got to be systematic about that, just like you are about the strength training and the other aspects of fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially the
Good.
spine. I mean, I'm going to keep going back to the neck and the spine. Catherine's got back problems. I've had back problems, and that is so much more important than the things that we thought of when we were young. You know, when we thought of flexibility and range of motion, it's really the core really is more important than all the extremities.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to have a strong core, incorporate exercises that develop all aspects of your core. But the transverse muscles are something that people just don't really realize. And that is a part of my teachings with my clients, is really developing that core. And it's not the six pack, it's not those visible abs. Yeah, you shouldn't really be working out if you don't have that at least built into, you know, what you're doing every day, focusing on that. And you could just do that while you're sitting in your chair. But yeah, again, I wish I knew what I knew now 20 years ago. I would have never had a back surgery, period.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Something I keep hearing. We'll have to do backs, and we still need to do chiropractic. I would love to do something on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And how do we reach you to sign up for some personal training and a consultation?
Fitandhappyclub.com. Thank you.
Yep. And I'll put the link below so that way it's easy. Click on it, contact Jake. And yeah, as always, this is informative, fun. Love these, and many more to come.
Thanks, Catherine. Good
Thank
job.
you. All right. Bye.